presentation we would like to share concerning the CEO's proposed boundary, grade, and program improvements. At the conclusion of the presentation, we will open the floor for comments. So far, we have 7 registered speakers for tonight. Each speaker will have a total of 3 minutes to speak. At the end of the 3 minutes, a buzzer will sound, and you may place your written comments in the box to the right of the podium. It's important that we hear from you tonight, and we appreciate you being here. One of the goals of Prince George's County Public Schools is to make the most economical and practical use of its physical resources in its implementation of its educational programs. In order to do this, we periodically determine by completing a comprehensive and detailed analysis the status of our current and projected use of all educational facilities. We review the efficient utilization of space and analyze the effective delivery of instruction. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. John Dale Jones Brown Jones, who's the Director of Pupil Accounting and School Boundaries, who will share tonight's presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I'd like to share with you again the summary of the CEO's recommendations in regards to boundary, grade, and program improvements. I'd like to start first by reviewing the schedule that we've been following. Again, these processes usually start with a public forums where we not only introduce the ideas of what may be proposed, but also solicit from the public ideas about alternative implementations, alternative plans in terms of addressing the problems that we have identified. Again, 2 public forums were held on the 20th and 21st of October. Using the input from those public forums, the CEO develops a recommendation, which is then released publicly, again, put on the website, and a formal public hearing, this event, is then held to further solicit public input. That input is then considered by the board along with the recommendation from the CEO for action by the Board of Education. And again, we are anticipating that that action would actually occur on the 12th, not the 10th of February. I believe the slide up there is incorrect. Again, the board vote is anticipated on the 12th of February. Following the board's action, there would be mail notices, usually U.S. postal mail, to those homes that are affected by any adopted changes. As I mentioned, there were 2 public forums that were held. On the 21st of October, a forum was held at Thomas Claggett concerning the potential closure. Again, there were approximately 50 attendees at that presentation. 95% of those present represented the Thomas Claggett Elementary School community. The community had been previously notified of the proposed closure and were again introduced to the logic of why that was necessary and the fact that it was again in response to specific concerns regarding the school's performance that had been raised by the Maryland State Department of Education. We discussed then the alternative assignments which would potentially occur for the schools, including having those students reassigned to John Vane Elementary School and District Heights. And again, there was acknowledgement of the proximity of those schools and the fact that they were within walking distance for the most part. And the parents accepted those as logical assignments for any students that would no longer be attending Thomas Claggett Elementary. Parents did express at that public forum an interest in applying for student transfers, and again, they would have that opportunity, as would any of our parents during the open season that the Office of Student Records and Transfers conducts. There was also some limited discussion about the parent-infant program, which is currently housed at Thomas Claggett, and alternative destinations for that program. And there was also, again, a few parents expressed concern over expanding the Hyattsville Middle School Creative and Performing Arts program to include the 6th grade. That was an idea that was discussed but was not adopted by the CEO, and we have no proposed changes in that program at this time. There's also was a public forum held on the 22nd of October at Kenmore Middle School. Approximately 100 individuals attended that, again, overwhelmingly representing the Kenmore Elementary School community. The parents in attendance at the forum expressed strong support for the Kenmore Elementary School principal and the staff. They also indicated a strong preference for the small size of the school, and there were also teachers that were present at the public forum who expressed that they could better serve the students based on the small size of that school. One of the ideas that was proposed or requested that we look into was creating an ECC, an Early Childhood Center, within Kenmore Elementary School, and to have those two programs co-locate rather than completely absorbing the building. Again, that idea was evaluated, but ultimately was not in the best interest of the district to pursue that particular option. The parents did express their disapproval of discontinuing use of Kenmore Elementary as a neighborhood school, and also concern if any capital improvements were spent on improving the school after the neighborhood population was removed. As in the Thomas Claggett hearing, there were also some parents that expressed concern over expanding the Hyattsville Middle School CPA program to include the 6th grade. Again, that was an idea that was discussed but was not adopted by the CEO in his recommendations to you. There was an individual also from the Accokeek Academy that expressed concern over the large size of that school and suggested that we consider future boundary adjustments to reduce that program. What we have and what we discussed and what has been recommended by the CEO in regards to Thomas Claggett is its closure as an elementary school. We also, again, would be recommending the conversion of Kenmore Elementary from a neighborhood elementary school to an early childhood center, assuming complete use of that building. There are a limited number of 6th grade changes that are being proposed for this year. There were some that were previously adopted that are being implemented this year, but there are only 2 changes that are being proposed for consideration this time around. There are also some limited number of what we consider to be minor boundary changes. Those are changes in streets primarily to eliminate problems or anomalies in our assignment patterns that affect 1 or 2 children. And there are 2 administrative adjustments that we are proposing to program boundaries. One in regards to the Early Childhood Center, that is with the creation of an Early Childhood Center at Kenmore Elementary. Again, the boundaries for the remaining ECCs, Fuchs and Wheatley, would be adjusted. And also suggesting a change in the ESOL boundary affecting Potomac High School students in particular. Those students are currently assigned to Oxon Hill High School. As many of you are aware, the performance of Thomas Claggett had been the source of some concern that had been expressed both within the district and at the state level. MSDE requested that we implement a plan to specifically address the continued flagging performance of the school, and among the options that were available to address that was to dissolve the school as an elementary school. Given its very low enrollment, it was one of the smallest elementary schools that we had, the district chose to pursue that option. And so the enrollment at Thomas Claggett would be reassigned to the 2 adjacent schools that have more than enough room to accommodate those students without overcrowding. Those 2 adjacent elementary schools are John Bain Elementary and District Heights. John Bain would receive approximately 130 students, and District Heights would receive approximately 60 students from Thomas Claggett. There's also an early childhood parent-infant program for hearing-impaired preschool children that's housed at Thomas Claggett. That program would be relocated to Kingsford Elementary School and would not require any capital adjustments to incorporate that school into its overall scheme of things. Here before you are a boundary showing the current boundaries indicated for Thomas Claggett in the light lime green there, and the reconfigured boundaries as proposed if, again, the board adopts the CEO's recommendation, which sends approximately 130 children to John Bain Elementary and 60 children to District Heights. Both of those schools are the children that are being reassigned are within the walking zone for those two schools, and we would not anticipate any increase in busing as a result of the reassignments. In regards to the numeric factors, again, you'll note the current utilization of Thomas Claggett at approximately 50% of the building's capacity with an enrollment of 234. Again, those students include some transfers as well as the parent-infant program, and again, all of those would be reassigned to different schools. After the reassignment, District Heights would be operating at approximately 90% of its state-rated capacity, whereas John Bain would be operating at 88% of its state-rated capacity. Both of those are significant improvements over the current 78% of capacity and 64% of capacity that those two schools are currently operating. In regards to the articulation pattern, there would be very modest changes. The slide before you shows how the children would be assigned to elementary and middle schools should the CEO's recommendation be adopted. For the children reassigned to John Bain, there would be no change in either their middle school or high school assignment. For those students that are reassigned to District Heights, they would be reassigned to Drew Freeman Middle School. The high school assignment would be unchanged as a result of this proposal. One of the pressing matters that this set of changes sought to address was the creation of a new early childhood center. Again, many of you are aware of the fact that between two of the early childhood centers now, we have more than 30 temporary buildings that are being used to house pre-K children. And what we were seeking was to use underutilized space and to create a center. Again, the idea of possibly incorporating a center within a school was evaluated, but looking at the staff assignments that were necessary to support this population and the number of children for it to be an efficient operation, again, the total use of the building was deemed appropriate. And as a result, we are proposing that, again, with the Kenmore Elementary School population be reassigned to William Paca, which has room to absorb that population, and a new early childhood center would open at Kenmore Elementary School. Right now, Kenmore does not have a 6th grade, but William Paca does. And in order to ensure that there's adequate room, the 6th grade population at William Paca would be assigned to Kenmore Middle School. Again, among the considerations in creating a new ECC was, again, the fact that there was substantial specialized staff that required auxiliary space beyond just the number of classrooms, the substantial overcrowding of the existing early childhood centers, as well as, again, the accessibility of the center to non-disabled peers, which is important for inclusion efforts. The positioning of Kenmore is also very attractive from the standpoint of relieving the overcrowding that currently occurs at Francis Fuchs and Phyllis Wheatley, which is where those temps that I mentioned, I believe it's 16 temps at one of the sites and 14 at the other site, are currently located. And again, this slide again reemphasizes the dire need for the additional space to create a new early childhood center. Again, at Fuchs, there is no more space for temporary. And with the growing population, again, there was concern that it really could not be addressed without a new facility or part of a facility being incorporated. Again, Kenmore's location, again, is very advantageous from the standpoint of relieving overcrowding at both Fuchs and at Wheatley. And from the standpoint of transportation would be, again, accessible to non-disabled peers so that we have a mixed population that would be occupying the school. The facility design actually mirrors that of Fuchs. And so it's a facility that the Early Childhood Office is very familiar with. They did have an opportunity to tour that and confirmed its suitability for use as an early childhood center. Again, in terms of talking about some of the quantitative factors that went into this decision, again, you'll note there the underutilization of Kenmore Elementary School, operating at 55% of its state-rated capacity. Again, under approximately 223 children were currently occupying it as of approximately September 30th. Those students could be absorbed completely in one school for William-Paca, which means that the sense of community, again, can be reestablished more easily since they're not being split among multiple schools. Again, that reassignment will also help boost the utilization of William-Paca, which is currently at 69% of state-rated capacity. We anticipate, as a result of this change, that it will be operating at 95% of its state-rated capacity. Now, I mentioned that the William-Paca sixth grade school students would be reassigned to Kenmore Middle School, and that is overcrowding the school further. But again, in that particular part of the county, we are experiencing, again, a growth that is overcrowding many of our elementary schools, and middle schools typically are better able to absorb that increase than our elementary schools. The sixth grade changes that are being proposed for this year include two: sending the remainder of Woodmore Elementary School sixth grade to Benjamin Tasker and Ernest Everett Just Middle School. That's a total of about 25 students, or less than 25 students currently. We would also be sending William-Paca's sixth grade to Kenmore Middle School, and I just talked about the need for doing that to ensure there's adequate space to absorb the population from Kenmore Elementary. Before you is a slight revision and update of a schedule that was published as part of the Educational Facilities Master Plan. Again, those changes that were previously adopted, sixth grade changes at Arrowhead, Barack Obama, Marlton, Melwood, Patuxent, and Rosaryville are being implemented this year. And the CEO has proposed that William-Paca and Kenmore also be added to the schedule of changes. Those other changes that you see there are prospective and have not been proposed. They are not part of this year's proposal at all, but may come to you at next year. In regards to minor boundary change, these are typically very small adjustments, typically one street or segment of a street, again, typically impacting fewer than 10 students. In this case, the most affected by any one street change is 2 students. And again, typically those students are given the right to remain at the school should they choose. So there's no immediate impact on there, and it does not substantially impact the utilization of either the sending or the receiving school. And again, these are primarily, again, fixing abnormalities or erroneous assignments that have crept into our boundaries over the years. In regards to adjustments in administrative boundaries, again, there are 2. One for the creation of a boundary for the new early childhood center that's being proposed at Kenmore, and the second one is sending ESOL students that are currently assigned to Oxon Hill from Potomac High School to their boundary school. One of the things that we've done as our ESOL and ELL population has grown is that once a certain threshold number is reached, we seek to go ahead and serve those children in their home schools rather than busing them to an ESOL center. And that's essentially what's being done in this case. The number of students at Potomac, or whose boundary school is Potomac, is sufficient to go ahead and support a program being delivered at that school rather than busing them to a distant location, which itself is experiencing some overcrowding. Again, the map there shows you an approximate boundary for the early childhood centers, with the lime green being the proposed or an anticipated boundary of Kenmore Elementary School. Francis Fuchs is in the tan, and in the Indian red is the Chapel Forge Early Childhood Center. And you can see again how its positioning does allow it to go ahead and relieve the boundaries of those two schools in particular, which are experiencing overcrowding. One of the things that's most important during both our public forums as well as the public hearings is to go ahead and hear from the public. Again, you heard a summary of the comments that we received from the public forums, and what we do is go ahead and invite the public to go ahead and submit comments, either in person at a public hearing such as this, or in writing to the board via an email address, or calling up Pupil Accounting, and they can register information there, or send it by U.S. postal mail. As an important part of the CEO and the board's deliberation, we're now going to switch phases and go to the public comment portion of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now begin with public comment. Just a reminder that you will have 3 minutes to speak. And if you have your comments in writing that can be left behind, we appreciate it. But if not, don't worry. We are still able to capture your comments via the televised presentation this evening. When I call your name, if you could please come to the podium. And the comments this evening will also be compiled and shared with the Board of Education during the February 12th, 2015 Board of Education meeting. If I mispronounce your name, please correct it when you come to the podium. I do apologize in advance. Eric Shakir. Eric Shakir. Lisa Gray. Fashawn Christopher. Please correct it if I didn't pronounce it. I apologize.
Close enough. Sean Christopher.
Sean.
Thank you. I am here representing the parents, teachers, and students of Kenmore Elementary School as a parent and the current Kenmore Elementary School PTA president. Kenmore Elementary School has provided outstanding education to thousands of students over the last 40-plus years. The staff and teachers are committed to every student and show it every day. The students at Kenmore have excelled every year and show it with their grades and commitment to studying and staying on the track to excellence. The scores at Kenmore are consistently high. The staff has proven itself committed to teaching and helping students grow each day. As a parent and volunteer at the school, I can say that my child is excited about coming to school each day. His grades have improved every year he has been here. After starting his elementary education at another county school, I was worried about his lack of reading. Since coming to Kenmore, his reading proficiency has gone from below average to high proficient. I commend the school and his teachers in making this happen. The impact closing Kenmore Elementary School would have goes beyond the students, though. It also impacts 27 teachers, 5 educational support staff, 2 paraprofessionals, 2 secretaries, 1 Title I coordinator, 1 guidance counselor, 4 building maintenance staff, and a principal that call Kenmore home. That is a total of 43 staff members and 226 students who would lose the school that not only provides outstanding education, but also makes everyone that walks through its doors feel welcomed. Over the last several weeks, I have been learning about the current building issues with another school 10 minutes away from Kenmore. The fact that the county is willing to let this building stay in use and put children's health at risk is a big concern to me as a parent. While I don't wish to see anyone displaced from a school they consider the best for their child, I would like to bring up the fact that rather than spend the money to fix the school for a new program, close another school to fix its building issues at the same time does not seem very cost-effective to me. Any time when budgeting and doing what is best for everyone is important, it would seem to me as a parent that the best idea would be to move these kids to a building that is safe and do the work that is very much needed at this school. One of the reasons we have been told that Kenmore is being closed is due to the under-enrollment at the school. Clearly, it would make sense to move the children from the building that is in dire need of repairs to Kenmore, who has the space and capabilities to accept these children. Budget-wise, this seems like a more cost-effective way to handle the situation for both the school, who has health concerns, and to provide a building that is within the same distance for the use for the ECC program. We, the parents, teachers, and students of Kenmore Elementary School, urge you to reconsider closing a great school. We ask you please consider the impact on present and future students closing this excellent school of learning would have. Thank you.
Thank you. Wayne Knox.
Good evening. My main concern here is to represent some of the parents and students that attend Kenmore. I so happen to have two kids that are attending Kenmore and have been doing excellent while they've been there. I look at what the representative for the CEO has indicated, and they talk about housing as if it was something that was a jail term. I look at what the recommendations were. I oppose all the recommendations that have been set down by the CEO due to the fact that I've been a member of the Kenmore family since 1971. 40-something years have went past, and the community is a good community. Next, it's like any other community. If you're weak, individuals will come in and they'll use the premises and say, hey, we can take over this premises because they're not going to be any fighters there. Well, I'm one of the fighters of the Kenmore family, and I come here to represent most of the families that are there, the ones with the kids like mine. I want my kids to continue to go to Kenmore. That's the reason that I'm here tonight. And when I hear individuals talk about the concern of childhood development centers, and this would be one, well, we're looking at the busing situation. They're talking about coming into this neighborhood with overloading the population that it is as far as traffic. We don't look forward to having that traffic because we're a small community. We look forward to having a good, quiet community like it has been. The school, in its effort to support my kids and other kids like my kids, I look forward to having them to have a better and a continual growing, developed education. I just want to say this one thing before closing. The representative talked about absorbing and adjusting. These kids can't possibly absorb anything with the mentality of what's going on in the Prince George's County area when you're overcrowded. Overcrowded never took care of anything. And with these kids being taken out of one good school and sent to another school, he talked about, I believe that was 95% in operation and all. I'm looking at, because I go out and I go into some of the schools and see the touring of what teachers have to deal with when it's overcrowded. William Packard would be overcrowded. My kid could never get the education that they would get from Kenmore Elementary. Thank you.
Thank you. Courtney Robinson. Paulette Davis. Latoya Smith.
Good evening. My name is Latoya Smith. I have a child that's in William Packard. I had 3 children that have been in William Packard I have a senior, a middle schooler, and now I have an elementary school. I have a couple of concerns. I have a 10-year-old that is walking from Dutch Village Drive down Barlow's Road, Matthew Henson. Now, the issue I have is I'm not going to have my child cross 202 to go to this school, to Kenmore Middle. I'm a bus driver for the county as well. I understand that changes need to be made, but at the same given time, this school has done excellent with my child. Straight A student, advancing all her testing, and even my middle schooler, he's in an AVID program coming out of William Packard. The issue that I'm having now is it's overcrowded. I shouldn't have a 10-year-old mixed in with an eighth grader, 7th grader, 13-year-old, 14-year-old. And my main concern is, my real main concern is just a 10-year-old walking down the street on Ballers Road. That's a high traffic area. Prince George's County cops shoot through there all day long. Up Matthew Henson, down Greenleaf, and everything else. I just feel that it should be something else that's done. Another middle school can be opened up that's closer, bus transportation for the kids that's walking that distance. I understand a 2-mile radius, but for a 10-year-old, a 10-mile radius is, a 2-mile radius is ridiculous to me, coming from where she's living at. No buddy system with her because there's no one in her area that is going to Kenmore next year. The second issue I have is there are excellent teachers at William Packard, excellent principal. I never had an issue out of that staff at all. I feel that they're doing excellent, providing all the education that they're giving to my child. For my child to be on honor roll since she's been there, which was Head Start, I do not want to take her out of that environment with a different change. So I'm asking that I don't want to propose this change at all. It's ridiculous to me. I wish it was other parents from William Packard here to represent as well. But like I said, I'm a county employee. I understand stuff need to be changed. But at the same time, if your child or daughter was walking down the street or getting pulled out of an environment that has been providing so much for your child and advancing them to stuff like college scholarships and stuff that your child is getting in at Kenmore now. My child came out of out of William Packard 2 years ago. Like I said, he's taking college course classes. He is basic. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes this evening's registered speakers. Please feel free to continue to submit your comments on the website that was provided on the last slide. Submit comments through February 11th, which is one day prior to the February 12th Board of Education meeting, where a decision will be rendered to determine whether the recommendations by the CEO will be accepted or not. Thank you for coming out this evening, and have a good night. I apologize. 2 board members, 2 of the names that I called earlier are here. If you don't mind, I'll go back to those first 2. Eric Shakir, and then after that, Lisa Gray. I apologize.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Eric Shakir, and I'm a lifelong resident of PG County Schools and a graduate of Ardmore, Goddard, and Duval schools here. My wife and I have 2 students at Kenmore Elementary, and we absolutely love it. We know most of the teachers on the first name basis. Our schools are performing well, and all of our classes are small. We're here today to criticize the proposed changes. Now, we do acknowledge that we need another ECC. Our own youngest child was a member of Francis Fuchs ECC. But this is not the way to do this. Bottom line, if it's not broke, we shouldn't fix it. Instead of closing Kenmore Elementary School, there should be other things to do to enhance the school. We know Kenmore has a small class size, but that is through no fault of its own. Kenmore has lost its TAG program, and Kenmore has also lost its 6th graders, and yet it still performs at a high level. One of the things that we do that have been criticized about the changes is that it doesn't consider many things. It doesn't consider the effect that students transferring to crowded, lower-performing school, with no disrespect to William Packard, but it is lower performing than Kenmore Elementary. It doesn't consider the fact that the Packard Elementary School students have to go to an overcrowded Kenmore Middle School, which your own report says will be over 112% above capacity. And it doesn't consider the effect of Kenmore Middle School as a whole. So we asked you to think about all these in consideration. It's not broke. Kenmore is a wonderful school. The facilities are clean because the staff and faculty take care of it. The students are in good shape, so we ask that. There is also one other consideration that we may ask you to consider is Ardmore Elementary School. Now, we know that it's been in the news because of the lead and the asbestos situation there. Ardmore may have to be closed. If that's closed, it's in a close location to Kenmore Elementary School and could be an alternative consideration. But please take into consideration the students and the faculty and the staff at Kenmore Elementary School. This is a school that is working. It is working, and it should not be closed. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Gray.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Gray. My husband, you just heard speak, Eric Shakir. I basically just wanted to retouch some of the topics he was talking about. We do have two sons that do go there in 4th and kindergarten. My son, one of my children, do have special learning disabilities, which Kenmore has been very good at accommodating with him with his needs. His teachers are very involved in his education, as well as the guidance counselors, principals, anything that I need at any time, they're willing to help me. And I would hate to see Kenmore close due to the fact that you guys want to turn it into an ECC program. My younger son did attend Francis Fuchs for 2 years, and I do understand that they're very overcrowded. But as my husband says, there's other options. You have other schools that are closed that can be put in and fixed up and use those as ECC in the same boundaries, like as Ardmore. I'm not saying that they're not a good school. I'm not saying they do need things fixed. Why not use that ability and the resources to fix that school and leave Kenmore and maybe transfer the kids there while that gets fixed and use it for Kenmore to fill up the spaces that were below, because I know we don't have a lot of children due to the fact that the 6th graders are no longer there, as well as the TAG program. But you can shift that around. Then the kids from Packer wouldn't have to walk over 202 to get to another school that's overcrowded, and maybe some of those kids have special needs or have accommodations that in an over classroom you can't accommodate those kids, as well as my son, who I don't feel will benefit if he doesn't have a small structured class and get the same accommodations and abilities that he's been getting at Kenmore for the last 2 to 3 years. I just would like for you guys to really think about the students and how it will put a hardship also on the parents who don't drive, who have to accommodate their schedule to get them to another school when this school has been so efficient for them and living up to all their standards with learning and pulling up their grades and helping them and everything like that. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the speakers for this evening.